Welcome to the 7th episode of Shot Nostalgia, where we continue our drive back into the history of wrestling and fully immerse ourselves in the timeline. We are continuing the journey through 1996 WCW to relive one of the most memorable years to be a wrestling fan. As always, I'm Stephen Acefield, the ace of the Turnbuckle Tavern, and I am joined by my fellow time-traveling pal, Mike Belcaster from, you're just back from Vegas, dude. What's going on?
Still muted there for a second. Man, doing good. It was a hell of a week last week. This week, it's all blended in together. I'm feeling a little bit my normal self outside of the Vegas bubbles. So it's good to be home. Had a great time out there, though.
It's great to have you back, man. And some of the content that we got there, not even some of it, all of the content we got from you from Double or Nothing weekend and the Fig reveals, it's exclusive stuff. So go back and check it out, guys. I know that some of the news it's a week old at this point, but the stuff that you got from the Tavern and that we gave you on Fig Night, it can't be duplicated. Live in real time, you're getting some of that information. And some of those displays were set up by our very own Mike Belcaster. So, and the photos in there were awesome. So excellent job, man. It was like, I was so proud of you and of the Tavern, and like you represented the Tavern so well, man. It was amazing.
Thank you, man. It was a blast.
Yeah, so, unfortunately, back to reality. I'm glad you're feeling better,
Yes.
but we are here to relive 1996 WCW, and I know that a lot of the Tavern's talking about 2022 and everything going on in MJF, but we have our own drama to unfold here because there's a lot to unpack in 1996.
Love it. I'm excited, man. Very, very excited.
All right, so let's get into it, man. We'll do the shilling at the end of the show. We want to make sure we fit everything in here. Today, we're going to be reviewing WCW Uncensored 1996 and the follow-up Nitro from March 25th. Each week, we'll be reviewing 2 episodes and obviously including pay-per-views. That's one of them today. So a lot of matches to talk about. We recommend you guys follow along by watching them before this show. Put them on in the background maybe while you're watching this show. It might help. And then next week, we'll be talking about the April 1st episode of Nitro. And April 15th, they skip a week. So we're like really flying through. We're going to be really approaching the summer, almost catching up to where we are right now. So that's happening pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting when it's on our timeline, kind of just float with us through the weeks, so it's going to be good.
Yeah. 2 episodes at a time. And we're flying through 1996. And as the year progresses, it's only going to get better. We know what happens, but the ride is so much fun to get there. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move into happy hour, and we'll talk about all the news in wrestling and, break down Dave Meltzer. He was in the news this week, but in 1996, he was also in the news. All right, this is happy hour. We're just going to get our lips wet a little bit, get a little buzz going. So we have 2 newsletters to break down. And the newsletters are becoming a little bit more sporadic apart, but I still wanted to pick 2 because there's a lot of important information that has to do with Uncensored and the review that Dave Meltzer and the whole Wrestling Observer crew brought into it. But let's start with the March 25th newsletter. And again, as you guys know, as a shoot, Mike Belcaster doesn't know some of the stuff in the newsletter unless he knew it before. And I throw it on him here live, and he reacts to it, which just makes this a lot of fun. So this is the first thing we have in here, and it's Hulk Hogan, and it's a long thing here, and I'm not going to read all of it, but the main gist of it is talking about how Hogan, based on his deal with WCW, is creative control, and he has full control of all of the programs that he's involved in, and he's basically the head booker, even though Kevin Sullivan has to handle most of the dirty work, as we come to see. So right before the pay-per-view was going to take air, he decided, and rumor has it with heavy influence from Randy Savage, to change the main event at WCW Uncensored from the 1-on-4 to a 2-on-8 4-decker cage with all rules that still haven't been fully explained. So this was a debut match here, but on the fly, instead of taking on a handicap match where they'd be taking on 1-on-4, now it's going to be 2-on-8. So this is Hogan rearing his head as sort of being going into business for myself, brother.
Hell yeah.
What's your thoughts on that? And I'll get into more about what the locker room was thinking about it, but initial thoughts. We hear about it all the time. This is a prime example of Hogan really taking advantage of the power that WCW gave him.
Yeah. Listen, Hogan's trying to change things on the fly to benefit himself. obviously not benefit the pay-per-view by any means. The match is just wild. So yeah, I don't know. Hogan's always got that labor. He's always trying to throw himself a little bone here and there. I think getting out of the the handicap match and putting it into a 2-on-8, if you will, it just sounds like madness on paper, and it's ridiculous.
It was ridiculous, and it was madness, all those things in like the worst possible way. When we talked about like Anarchy in the Arena, Double or Nothing, that was good madness, but this was every bit as bad as you probably expected. We'll get into the main event and talk about it. In the midweek, Hogan released information to the company that he was adding Savage and 4 heels to the main event. Savage's Falls Count Anywhere match with Chris Benoit was already a problem since Benoit was on tour with New Japan. So if need be, Benoit could have come back early, as Booker T is going to do for the show. So now we have Savage this same week is expected to go to New Japan and work with Chris Benoit. We talked about this last week. The forbidden door was sort of open with WCW New Japan here, and it looks very similar. I'd have to go back and watch Randy Savage's work in New Japan. I don't think I've ever seen him do anything there.
Yeah, me neither. Very interesting, though. I'd like to take a little dive into that area. That would be fantastic.
So more on Hogan here. People are talking about how frustrated they are with the booking because he's dipping his hands into programs that are not even his. So this is what Meltzer had to say. Since Hogan's frequent changes in the booking winds up frustrating everyone, combined with the fact that Saturday shows, which he rarely appears on, are doing big ratings. The last house show run without him, Savage, Road Warriors, and Steiners did big business, puts the multi-million-dollar contract in a large cut of every pay-per-view show in question. So in addition, both Hogan and Savage were said to have strongly opposed Bischoff's decision to bring in Kevin Nash and Scott Hall with big dollar contracts. Hogan came back by booking himself on the March 18th Nitro show after the original committee had put together the show without he and Savage and had booked a Flair vs. Sting world title match, coming off the 2 big ratings on a Saturday show as the Nitro main event. Interesting to hear about him not wanting Nash and Hall because obviously it's threatening his spot. Little did he know that gravy train would still be paying dividends today, with the NWO show being one of the best selling shirts even today off WWE Shop.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that when you hear that? Is that just typical Hogan, or is that just maybe conjecture that's not actually accurate?
It sounds like typical Hogan at this point, trying to get all the milk money for himself. And yeah, like you said, little did he know that was going to be a rocket ship strapped with cash. And only history tells the tale, and it's crazy that Hogan was so against it.
So what Meltzer kind of alluded to that at the end of here, and he didn't actually say it, but he was talking about Hogan's power within the company as far as booking goes is contingent on the success of this main event here at Uncensored, buy rate wise. And we know how it goes. We know that it's not received well. We know that actually the match is considered one of the worst main events in wrestling history, wrestling pay-per-view history. So this is what he had said. So if it does well and even has a decent buy rate coming into the wake of the ratings, then Hogan's position of power will be safe. If it doesn't, with Hogan making all the late changes and booking the card so heavily around himself and his friends, then there may become a crack in his autonomous power. So I know in his contract, and I'm not sure, I haven't seen the language in it, that he has a lot of creative control. And that wound up being the demise of WCW because you have all these guys that have creative control. Nobody wants to lose. Nobody wants to look weak. And then you can't have a wrestling show if someone doesn't want to do the job.
Yeah.
And we see that rear its head all throughout the history of the company, Hogan being the first really of this whole line of guys with the booking power. His friends Nash and Hall eventually get the same type of, benefit of the contract and the guaranteed money. But I guess my question to you is that, do you think that with Hogan's success here in, coming into this main event, do you think it has anything to do with, do you think that we don't have, the results from this main event, and do you see the follow-up from it?
Yeah, no, I don't know. This was a weird concept for a match to begin with. Adding more shit to it just obviously made it even more of a blunder. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a tough one.
No, yeah, I mean, it's just challenging to look at it, but I think Hogan continues his power here, and I think a lot of the booking power stays with him. And I know that we see he has a large decision to make as far as ratings go. Bischoff has to really fight and claw out of it. And I think Hogan eventually gains the trust. Well, Bischoff gains the trust of Hogan to trust and say, let me just do my thing. But, you know, when you listen to these shoot interviews from guys in WCW, you don't know what's right and what's wrong. We listen to 83 Weeks from Eric Bischoff. You listen to Hogan talk about it. You listen to Nash talk. Everybody has a different story.
Yeah.
So and eventually when Vince Russo comes in, he has his own story too. It just seems like absolutely insane. We don't know what's actually the truth, but it's so interesting to see how much power they gave into a free agent. I can't even imagine. Think about Cody Rhodes in WWE today. Like, imagine them giving him
the golden rub from Vince McMahon when keeping his gimmick and all that stuff, like unheard of nowadays. But him having full creative control over his actual character in ring stuff, it might not fare well, or it might be the best thing ever. You don't really necessarily know until you know. But it would be asinine to think like Vince would just be like, here, it's all you, kid. Go out there and do you,
Yeah, it seems like the wrestling world has changed a lot since 1996, obviously.
Yeah.
And guys are not really cutting each other off at the knees to keep their spot. It's more of a collaborative effort. Even a guy like Cody coming in, I feel like Cody is willing to do the job to anybody. We watch his AEW run. He loses to Sam. He loses to Darby. He loses to anybody that he could and almost lost too much.
Yeah.
Hogan was insecure of his spot, clearly, because he felt like he was getting older. The fans were turning on him. And I think that hurt the product. And I think we're going to see the product get hotter than ever. So it almost feels like it's Hogan's doing, but it's really the opposite. You can see here, he didn't want Nash and Hall to even come in. So it's like an accident that this even happened.
Yeah.
And it happens despite Hogan, not because of Hogan. And I feel like I know revisionist history will say Hogan is the reason it happened, but I think if we pull it apart, it's more Nash and Hall.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Hogan just happened to be the right person to join up and team with them. If it could have been anybody, it might not have been as big, but I think Kevin Nash and Scott Hall both carried that debut, that whole process. It was definitely them. They were the guys coming over from the dark side, if you will.
Yeah, I can't see WCW getting off the ground and competing with WWF in a big way with just the red and yellow Hulk Hogan. It was completely fizzling out, and the train was hitting its last legs. Like it was going to go off the tracks, and eventually you have to find a new star. And I mean, it was a happy accident for WCW, but we'll talk about that more as it comes along. We're going to move on to Johnny B. Bad here. We talked about last week how he quit the promotion in the airport in Florida with Eric Bischoff, and he signed a 3-year deal with WWF on March 14th. And in place of his I Quit match against Diamond Dallas Page will be taken by the Bootyman, Hogan's best friend, Ed Leslie, who we know is Brutus the Barber Beefcake. He will have Diamond Doll, who is now known as Booty Girl, in his corner, with the stipulation that Page must quit if he loses. So interesting enough, in the newsletter, I know we talked about how Eric Bischoff didn't really seem to care that Johnny B. Bad was leaving. We talked about people in the back saying that there was far more made of losing Johnny B. Bad within WCW than one would expect within the company, because they had taken great strides and because of the belief that he's the type of person who may make it really big in WWF. So we know Mark Marrow doesn't really hit big. He doesn't resonate with the fans in WWF either. They go on to talk about the rights of what is being held. They're not allowed to use a lot of likeness of him. They can't use certain facial expressions. We talked about that stuff with Scott Hall. They can't use the toothpick.
Yeah.
Where's the line get drawn, as far as what's copyright, what's not? It's it's a guy's face, like you can't tell him not to smile a certain way. I guess we'll close the book on Mark Marrow because it's the last we'll talk about him. I guess give me your final thoughts on Mark Marrow's sort of run in WCW as Johnny B. Bad, and then also, I guess, what you remember of him in the Attitude Era, I guess, as Sable's manager.
Listen, he wasn't anything spectacular. I didn't see all the hype about him, and I don't know why they seen a lot of hype into him, especially when he goes over to WWF. He lives that Sable manager gimmick for. I mean, he wrestled a lot. He had his fair share of matches.
Pretty good finisher. That TKO is a nice move. Yeah,
TKO was great. Wasn't he not in Brawl for All? The boxing.
He was. Yeah, I think he got knocked out in the first round. I think the shoot big guys like Godfather and Dan Severn and who even won? Bart Gunn won that.
Yeah. Yep. So I mean, he didn't he wasn't just a waste of space per se, but I never seen him going anywhere bigger than he got already. So the fact that he was paired up with Sable, he was lucky that it took off as well as it did. So good riddance.
Yeah, happy trails, as they say, Johnny B. Bad. We're not really going to miss you.
Yeah.
So unless you want to come on the podcast, we'll talk to you and interview you. No, not really, actually. I don't really care. So we talk about Zeus. We saw the debut of Zeus, former WWF superstar, feuding with Hulk Hogan in the early 90s. And we also saw the Final Solution. So there was some drama here. So they renamed Zeus to Z Gangsta, as we talked about last week. He's an older, flabbier version of himself, is what Dave Meltzer says. And there was an issue with the name Final Solution due to some of the history with Nazi Germany and all that stuff with that. So they had to, on the fly, change the name. And I think the only time on Nitro is when we saw the name. They called him the Final Annihilation, is what we see him on Uncensored with. And I think that's the last time we see him on TV.
Yeah.
He's just a big guy that Hogan likes to work out with. I think that's what we found out about him. There's nothing really else to talk about. He was just a Southern California indie wrestler that Hogan happened to work out with on the beach, liked his size, liked his look, asked him to be in this main event. And so all of a sudden he goes from indie work in Southern California to work in the main event of WCW Uncensored and has done really nothing else. So,
yeah,
I mean,
interesting.
The name never, I don't know. If you put his face in a lineup, I would never pick Final Annihilation out that you were a pro wrestler. Big guy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Some of these WCW guys, even some of these other guys that we look at, there's a lot of guys on this card that you forget because they were only around for like a couple months, couple matches. So, and Final Annihilation is one of them.
Yeah. Get in line with Loch Ness.
Yeah, exactly. So we also have Brian Pillman stuff. So he made a cameo on the March 11th Nitro. We got more intro about that. That was from Winston-Salem. And people were talking about the big reaction that Pillman got from the crowd. Hogan apparently ordered Pillman to return immediately and get involved with him rather than milk the angle as originally planned with Bischoff. So by being aligned with the main heel group, it meant being on the same side as Kevin Sullivan. So the original plan was for Kevin Sullivan and Brian Pillman to be in the same match, where Hogan would be on the other side. And then to branch off, they wanted Hogan to feud with Brian Pillman and then pretty much get rid of that whole loose cannon gimmick and pay it off there. So what his exact ideas with Pillman were unclear, but having Pillman return in this manner pretty much would have killed all his momentum. WCW tried to work all its wrestlers and killed 98% of the impact Pillman had coming back. We obviously know that he doesn't wrestle this match, but it's so interesting. Again, Hogan going to business for himself, trying to strap himself to anyone that's getting hot. And
yeah,
Hogan was going over if he's shooting with Pillman too.
Yeah, no, that would have been a mess of a program, and I'm glad it didn't come out. I'm glad it didn't come to a head and happen.
Yeah, it would have been a laughable thing to even that's the payoff of the loose cannon thing, that he's going all over the place, going interpromotional, and he just gets squashed for the leg drop from Hogan. It just seems laughable.
Oh, terrible.
Hogan's a little desperate here, I would say, right?
Oh yeah, no, you could start seeing it coming more and more and more as the weeks go on.
So speaking of Pillman, he officially quit ECW just hours earlier after a 4 a.m. phone conversation with Paul Heyman and another with Steve Carell, with the two sides disagreeing regarding payment for the production of a commercial for Pillman's newly created 900 lines. Pillman claimed that part of his agreement was to go to WCW, while WCW presented him with a $7,600 bill for the production. So they got into an argument. There was heat between the two sides that turned out to be really bad. There was conjecture whether this was a work or a shoot. Again, in the newsletter, we're seeing that today, literally, about MJF. So even Meltzer was unsure about this today. There's a lot that is going on with Pillman here. He's all over the place. We eventually see him go to WWF, and that's sort of his resting place until his unfortunate career ends. But he is he is the news story all throughout 1996. He continues to show up all throughout the newsletter, and you have to talk about him. He's absolutely a loose cannon. He truly is.
Yeah, no, he was the hot topic of the year, man, and for good reason. He was phenomenally taking over the wrestling industry just by doing things that haven't necessarily happened before. We're getting, Pillman running rampant through every company, basically. So very interesting.
The other thing that popped up in the newsletter, and again, Meltzer does not list this as a work or a shoot. He just sort of just lists the information. He talks about how Pillman, Lister, and Swenson being his agents, showed up at the end of the Hogan Savage versus Ric Flair Sullivan match on March 18th Nitro from Chattanooga, with Pillman attacking both Hogan and Savage, but also at one point going after Sullivan, while Lister and Swenson showed up in the ring, and Hogan and Savage backed off to sell their immense size. Savage reportedly received a black eye from Pillman. So Meltzer he alludes that Pillman sort of went into business for himself and attacked Savage. I'd be curious to look more into this, about maybe if Savage talks about this in any shoot interviews. Yeah. But yeah, Savage had a legit black eye from Brian Pillman here.
Man, that's crazy. I mean, Pillman should be going in business with him, or for himself at this point. I mean, he was doing such good work, and they were kind of starting to screw around with him and not really follow through with everything, and it just got crazy.
So in here, it says Pillman saw his obligations with WCW until April 17th. And that's probably why we see him showing up in different capacities. And I don't want to talk about current day product, but we kind of have to with the MJF stuff. This is so eerily similar to what happened on Wednesday in Dynamite, and also this weekend with Double or Nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, the promo on Dynamite was just insane, insanely good for that fact too. I thought it was done perfect. I don't know how else you could blur the lines for any casual fan watching. You have MJF calling Tony Khan a mark and begging him to be fired, and calling a lot of truthful statements about new talent coming in, and MJF being upset that he's not getting the money that he deserves and he's earned because he's the best in the company, and these guys coming in can't lace his boots. I mean, it's so. There's that truthfulness to it, but it's also, I could see it being a work from a mile away. I don't think MJF's gone by any means. I think this is just going to grow into a bigger storyline, and it's very, very interesting that they chose to do it this weekend and then kind of move it into Wednesday and pull the trigger so fast on Wednesday. MJF could have came out there and just kind of did his spiel and left, but he went off, and it was a beautiful thing to see as a pro wrestling fan.
Yeah, so I mean, people talk about how this would never be able to be pulled off today, but I would argue that social media makes it a little bit more accessible for the fans to actually understand what is real and what's not. And I think the fact that now you have AEW social media playing into the fact that they're taking his merch off the site. They're taking his name off the website, off the roster. They're really playing into this. And I think if Pillman existed in 2022 and this whole thing, and again, we're seeing it play in real time, because that promo was eerily similar to the Eddie Guerrero promo he cut on Nitro many years when he quit.
Yeah.
So I think that a big piece to this is that reality is blurred, right? So now we're sitting here, and we all understand that it is a storyline now, but there is some truth into what's going on. I think the same thing was going on with Pillman.
100%.
So we move on here, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, the press conference that was held on March 15th for the proposed multi-promotional show in LA, arranged by Antonio Inoki. There's other people involved now at this point: Dan Severn, Antonio Pena, Seiji Suzuki, and Eric Bischoff. There's nothing officially announced as far as the show, but it was originally announced that WCW, New Japan, AAA, EMLL are all going to be there represented as far as the Super Show. So the only people that did not show up was WWF. They refused to show up. Obviously, that there was some drama between Bischoff and Vince McMahon. I think specifically Linda was taking the lead on this. So yeah. We see this, and eventually the show happens. It wasn't as big as we expected it to be, but as we approach Forbidden Door here in AEW, this was happened all the way back in 1996, and it could have been much bigger than what Forbidden Door is actually, because you had not only just two promotions going there, you had every big promotion in the world.
No, it sounded too good to be true. It was one of those things. It's everybody working together. It would have been amazing. It would have been absolutely amazing if they pulled it off.
So what he continues to say is that all sides talked about not letting the traditional wrestling politics get in the way of the show, yet they did, as the only ones who attended were AAA, New Japan, and WCW, that they already work together. As we see the interchanging of the talent, the door's already open. The rivals, WWF and EMLL, did not attend, and despite Bischoff saying it wouldn't get in the way, you really just can't imagine WWF would send their wrestlers to a show with the relationship being as strained as it is. Bischoff had said to the media that he felt the show was coming too soon and that they needed 9 or 10 months to plan it out to do it right. Inoki was apparently the one that put up most of the money and has any sort of financial loss to be gained or loss to be had here. So it's falling apart. And luckily now today we have Forbidden Door and we have these dream matches coming up. We're going to see Tanahashi versus CM Punk. Allegedly, according to Wrestling Observer and Fightful, we're going to be seeing Hangman Page versus Okada. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in wrestling now. Could have been much cooler in 1996 if they were able to get their shit together and actually get together and work on it. But alas, it wasn't able to. The show happens. It winds up being, as we say here, a fart in church. It wasn't great. So could have been much bigger, though.
No, absolutely.
So we're going to move here to the April 2nd newsletter. And I'm going to skip over some stuff here because I don't want to move too far ahead because our Nitros next week are going to talk about some of this. But I want to just talk about the uncensored reviews. So WCW Uncensored, which aired on March 24th, and again, we're going to talk about that, received blistering reviews from every outlet, whether it be media pundits or fans. Many wrote and faxed in that they believed it to be the worst pay-per-view show in history. For a show, for me, watching the show, it had about 3 matches that were pretty damn good. And we'll talk about it as we get to it. I feel like it was overly harsh and people were judging the main event with the whole show. I think it wasn't the worst show I've ever seen. The main event, yeah, you can make the argument that it was really bad, but yeah. Interesting to see people were reacting this way. They were like viscerally upset with the way the show went.
Well, I mean, I don't blame them. I would have had a stiff reaction too about that Doomsday cage match because it was just a cluster. And like, I don't want to jump the gun and talk about it now, but we'll get to it. It was not fun. It looked like a movie. It was the drizzling shits. So
yeah, we'll definitely talk about it. That's pretty much the reason why we're here and why you guys clicked this here as well. WCW Uncensored is sort of one of those things you have to see to believe. The last 2 things I want to talk about here in the newsletter, and there's more stuff, but we'll talk more about it next week because it has to do with the Nitro. Pillman is back in the good graces of ECW. They got back together and they finally had they aired the 2 vignettes, one which he acting like he got a new job as a book in a restaurant and spit on the salad he was making for Gary Juster, and the other, the show ender, where an old man asked him for an autograph and he was acting normal. And the guy said he's different from how he appears on TV. And Pillman basically said that the loose cannon stuff is all work. Then after the guy left, he went crazy as the show ended. So Meltzer talks about the problems that existed between Pillman and Heyman being resolved. Heyman still to this day claims there were no problems, that it was all work. And both have pretty well agreed to build an angle towards Pillman versus Shane Douglas in Philadelphia at a larger arena. So Pillman still has contractual obligations to WCW, as we mentioned, until April 17th. The 2 sides are working together to at least, I guess, get Pillman out of the contract. It's interesting because WCW and ECW are not getting along because ECW is sort of the fodder to WWF. But Pillman, again, all over here, blurring the lines of reality, what's real, what's not. Heyman saying a lot of it was a work. They're playing it off with the commercial as well, saying that he's a normal guy, and then he goes crazy and everything he's doing is a work. Man, like MJF is going to be blurring these lines and doing the exact same thing this whole summer.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they're going to piggyback off of another company and see if MJF shows up anywhere else. I don't necessarily see him showing up in WWE, especially not this early. Like his contract is not up, so I mean, unless they pull some magic there. But I'm very curious to see where this goes now because it's rapidly taking off, and I hope they treat it well. I hope it doesn't just spin out of control and then end with a fart in church, as you like to so lovingly put it.
It is a fine line between silly and interesting, right? Because everything that happened Wednesday was perfect to me. Like it was the pipe bomb. It was the Pillman promo where he quits. The the Booker Man promo we talked about so many weeks ago. It
Yeah.
blurs a line of reality and makes it interesting. But when it becomes silly when it's overshooting the whole roster, and you want to make sure you're careful with that. You want to be able to. And I know the argument that a lot of people were making was that when you bury the company with one of the guys, you have some of the fans start to believe what he's saying. So you have to be careful with that, especially when the fans start to cheer these guys as an anti-hero. A guy like MJF, if he becomes an anti-hero, that means people are cheering for the shortcomings of your company. So it's really not good for the image. And I understand, he's a heel, but he got cheers at the end of Dynamite, or after his segment, and Punk became an uber babyface after his pipe bomb. I'm not saying they're going to book MJF as a face, but you can't help the way the crowd reacts. And if people liked what they heard from MJF, they're going to cheer him every time he's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And only time will tell. Next time we see him again, he could just rip the audience a new one, saying it's their fault too. So who knows?
I mean, he had some of that in this promo where he was talking about, you guys are the reason. Like, where were you when everyone was ripping on me, calling me unprofessional? Why are you cheering all these WWE guys? All that, but. I mean, it's crazy because Tony Khan is a student of the game. He's a fan of wrestling. The Pillman story is pretty much imprinted in his brain. He has like a rote memory of wrestling. If you listen to the things he talks about, he can recall matches and dates and venues and specific moments. So given this sandbox to play with all these wrestling figures, he's able to recreate these moments that he loves so well and sort of combine them. We're seeing the pipe bomb combined with other things we've seen on TV with the Pillman stuff, and also like with Eddie Guerrero. And it's so much fun to watch with Tony Khan and even MJF, they clearly have a passion for wrestling and making it entertaining. And when guys are loving what they do, it makes it really fun to watch. And I think that's not to say guys that are, working right now and other guys are not loving what they do, but when you're creative enough to blur those lines and make it fun to trick people and make people believe this feels like Santa Claus is real again, Double or Nothing weekend felt like, and I may have been being worked. And I think we can easily say at this point, we definitely were worked in some capacity, even if it started as a shoot, all the stuff with the Mandalay Bay, the Mandalay casino things where he's sitting at the slots instead of being at Fan Fest. This is all from the Pillman playbook, man. It's cut from the same cloth. And if Pillman had access to Twitter and we had push notifications about what his whereabouts were, God knows what he would have done. He would have been all over the place. Yeah, he's on a plane. Yeah, he's parachuting into a stadium. Yeah, he's sitting courtside Game 7 of the Boston Celtics versus the Miami Heat. He would have done that. That would have been the best move, by the way. Complete side note: if MJF didn't show up to the pay-per-view and sat courtside at the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat after all that talk about starting the main event after the NBA game. But,
it would have been awesome.
I mean, crazy. But any final thoughts about the newsletter stuff before we get into getting your fix and talking about the results of WCW Uncensored?
You know what? It's a lot of Hogan being Hogan. The Forbidden Door show in '96 just sounds like it's starting to really fall apart. It's just very interesting, man. I love these Observer throwbacks. I think it's very, very akin to a lot of stuff that we see today, and for better or worse, it's pretty cool. So I'm here for it, man.
Hell yeah, man! And we'll go over the results one of these days on that Forbidden Door show from WCW and EML, AAA and New Japan. We briefly talked about the card. If you want to go back a few episodes ago, and when we talked about it. Card's not great, They didn't deliver on anything. And it's because they didn't have the full pool of guys that you could pull from. It's like, a lot of the matchups we've seen between WCW and New Japan happened because they were working so cohesively together for so many years. So we didn't get those dream matches of maybe WWF guys like a Shawn Michaels popping in and wrestling some guy from New Japan. That would have been amazing to me.
Yeah, 100% would have been mind blowing.
But I don't want to live in a world where everybody's we're being worked by Cody Rhodes right now, and then MJF, and everybody's working together. Like, imagine the buzz, and we'll move on to get you fixed in a second, but I'm going to pontificate for a second. Imagine the buzz if MJF shows up on Raw or shows up at Hell in a Cell, and it's all work, but he shows up. Imagine the wrestling world would just implode.
Yeah, it'd be awesome if he bought a ticket.
Yeah.
And just sat in the crowd. Like, Nope, I'm here. I haven't left Vegas. Fuck this. He's like, I went to LA. I'm going back to Vegas.
But that's how you create a boom period where you have this, like, you have casual fans that are interested in the product. You talked about in the AEW wrap-up show, potentially we had maybe 10, 20,000 extra buys because of the MJF situation. And we could talk all day about the effect of how it on Wardlow. But as far as financial gain, this is gonna rake in the money because this is what draws. People love when reality is there. And yeah, they can say, well, that was fake, but this is real. And MJF doesn't want to be there. Maybe he's going to do something unplanned and come unhinged. And that promo on Wednesday, they knew he was going to say that, but they didn't know he was going to say that. And that's when things become really fun.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it.
All right, let's move into Get You Fixed, and let's talk about WCW Uncensored 1996. All right, it didn't play on my end, but you were dancing again, so I'm hoping it played.
Always. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know why it doesn't. When I have it minimized, it usually doesn't play for some reason, so I don't get to enjoy the juices of Hulk Hogan.
Oh yeah, getting into that white powder in the cage match. Yeah,
exactly. So we are talking about the infamous WCW Uncensored 1996. So much wrestling to unpack, and the Nitro, they go really fast. But we were texting earlier today about just how long some of these matches are, and it's a lot of good wrestling. They jam pack these pay-per-views. So everyone that wants to complain about Double or Nothing being long, I mean, he's following in the same vein as WCW pay-per-views, and they weren't 5 hours, but some of these matches, man, they were marathons. But we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So we have Tony Schiavone, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, in the booth to talk about all the things going on with the main event. That's the focus of most of the hype here. We have some really good matches on the undercard, but the main event is what the announcers are talking about the whole night and building up the cage. You could see Tony Schiavone laugh in the beginning of the show when they're hyping up the cage. He can't even take it seriously. If you guys go back and watch Tony's reaction. He can't even keep a straight face when they're talking about how it is actually a threat. Like, they're trying to hype it as it's scary because it's sitting on the ramp the whole night. Yeah. But Tony Schiavone he's smiling, and not in a good way. So just something to watch. So I'm going to put up the scroll here, and you guys can follow along here. Our opening contest, we have the WCW United States Championship match, Conan versus Eddie Guerrero. So this match was awesome. It went 18 minutes and 27 seconds. We had Conan retaining the championship. Eddie Guerrero is in peak form here. Just a master in the ring. And Conan, he's great. I'm loving Conan.
No, Conan's doing some great work. Him paired with Eddie is like peanut butter and jelly. You can't make it any better than that. I thought the match was good. I just thought it was long, especially for like that lucha style of a match. The high flyers, and it was just. This was the better of the matches on this card, for the show. I think this is like one of my favorites on there, but it was just dragged out a little bit, not terribly, nothing to complain about. But I mean, 18 minutes is a long match for a world. What's it called? The U.S. title. So very, very interesting.
Yeah, I would say probably five minutes too long here, and. For an opener too, you want to get the crowd hot. And this is the type of match that could get the crowd off to a good start. Yeah. We have Conan winning the match, like we said, but there's a couple cool spots I want to talk about. One specifically was Eddie Guerrero hitting a Hurricane Rana for a near fall. We thought he was going to get the win. And with these WCW matches, some of these guys win with just typical moves. There was a match on Nitro a few weeks ago that Conan won with like an Alabama Slam. Matches end very abruptly, and that's like you're conditioned to watch AEW. There's so many near falls. When a near fall happens in WCW, it's almost shocking that he kicks out of some of these things. So that was cool. Conan going to the top rope for a few times, and he moves around really well. And I think for me, Conan, I'm so used to the Filthy Animals Conan. I know I say this every time I see him, where he's a little bit overweight, he doesn't move around too well. But he looks like, he's like built like Miro here. He's like broad shouldered. He looks great. He's $1 million. I'm surprised they didn't strap like a rocket and put him in the main event here. He looked like everything you want in a guy, especially, a guy who is an international superstar, allegedly. Mexican world champion of that fake championship he doesn't actually have. Yeah, I mean, superplexes. We also got some shady stuff going on. We got monkey flips. This was a really, really good match, and I enjoyed it. Again, 5 minutes too long, but yeah, retaining the title, and Guerrero doesn't get the win here.
I did love that monkey spot, the way it was set up, because who did Eddie did it to Conan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but Conan wasn't even backed up in the corner all the way. Like, so he was out in the like middle, not so much in the middle of the ring, but he was getting there, and it looked flawless. It was beautiful looking, man.
Yeah. So one of the critical things I wrote about this match was just how, and I mentioned before in the opening, that the announcers were focused on hyping the main event, and that was very apparent during this match. These guys are working their asses off in the middle of this match, and halfway through, they're not even talking about what's going on in the action. And that is a huge pet peeve of mine. And when I'm watching any product, WWE is very guilty of it. They've been guilty of it for a long time, talking about matches happening later in the night. For this match, I think, especially with the reverence that the U.S. title should hold, and two guys that are absolutely amazing in the ring, they went to almost 20 minutes, and it seems like the announcers really didn't even care. They came in and out. But to me, I think the reason why I felt so long is because the announcers were like treating it as a secondary thing. But once it got going, it was really good. And I think it was a solid match with fast-paced action. And now that we know what both their careers went, what Eddie Guerrero became, I mean, it's really fun to go watch him when he's at this age.
Yeah.
So after the match, Conan helps Guerrero to his feet, and then he pushes him away, and they argue about whether the low blow was intentional or not, and they go to the replays. We have Mean Gene backstage, talks more about the WCW hotline. There are a whole bunch of segments here, especially on Nitro, but on this right here, they have all these cool graphics, and I know the Chads are amazing with the graphics, but we should make something very similar with the Tavern hotline number with this, like the same WCW model. Yeah, that would be really cool. Or even like take the 1-800-COLLECT font that sponsors all these shows, and you should put the Tavern number or something. I don't know. They can do something cool. So we continue to have, this segment. They show the giant typing on a computer, and it says you can chat with him live. It's so funny seeing him sit there with the computer as like hunched over in his tights.
CompuServe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, we have the next match here: Lord Steven Regal with Jeeves versus the Belfast Bruiser, and this is the match that people remember from this pay-per-view, aside from the clusterfuck that was the main event.
Yeah.
So for those that don't remember, as we talked about last week, Belfast Bruiser is Fit Finlay. We're going to see Fit Finlay's son working on Dynamite next week against Hangman Page with the Forbidden Door being open. So tying all those loose ends together.
Yeah.
Dusty Rhodes couldn't get Jeeves' name right at all. He kept calling him Chives throughout the match, which was hilarious. I'm not sure if it was purposeful, but it was really funny.
It's Dusty-isms,
Dude, this match, they went out there and pounded the shit out of each other. And this match almost went 18 minutes as well. 17 minutes and 33 seconds. This is one of the most physical matches I think I've ever seen. I've seen Minoru Suzuki matches. We watched Bryan Danielson go out there. We watched Jon Moxley beat the crap out of people. These two guys, the punches and kicks were stiff as hell. I don't think they were pulling anything. It was absolutely a shoot. And they look like they're having a great time. I mean, the spot with the broken nose on Regal, not ideal. Not ideal.
Yeah, he was a mess after this. He got the shit kicked out of him. It was wild.
This was really entertaining to watch, and I love this style of wrestling. It didn't resonate with the crowd here. And we talked about this with the Belfast Bruiser. He was ahead of his time. I think a lot of his style, the European hard-hitting, snug work that the Japanese style works, that he probably learned on his tour of Japan. Yeah. Every move had something a little bit extra on it. Man, this match was good. And if you have to pick one match to watch from this card, that was good. I mean, you have to watch everything, and you have to watch that cage match because you have to see it once in your life. This match was
so bad it's good.
Dude, this match was so good. I can't say enough good things about it. This was a fun 18 minutes to get through. I loved it.
Yeah, this one flew by. This one was a really captivating, solid, easy watch. I had a blast. Like I said, Regal got the shit beat out of him. Like I was reading up while I was watching it, and he broke his nose, his cheekbone, and so I forgot what else, but he was a mess after the match. It was just terrible. And it was great though. Such a good, just beat the shit out of each other. two big guys. You know, it was like a bar fight. It was a legit bar fight with sanctioned rules.
Yeah, man, this was insane. And yeah, I mean, at least both guys were giving to each other. It wasn't like hardcore Holly bullying a rookie in the ring. It was these two guys were going out there and really giving it to each other. But
yeah,
we have Mean Gene backstage again, and he has the Giant and Jimmy Hart. And Hart says he will prove to everyone that he's the greatest manager in the history of wrestling. Gene says the winner of the Giants match night against Loch Ness will get a shot at the WCW Heavyweight Championship. And Gene continues to shield the hotline. The hotline is clearly something that they're trying to get over. Big. It winds up being really popular, if I remember. If everything I read, the hotline became sort of revolutionary as far as how people get their news. Yeah, nice little segment here. Jimmy Hart is clearly not the best manager in wrestling ever. What were your thoughts on this?
It wasn't needed. This felt like something that was going to be on a Nitro or even a Thunder or Saturday Night. Like it didn't have. I don't know. It just didn't have. It was something that just didn't need to be there, you know. But it wasn't bad. Jimmy Hart's terrible. Let's go. It's just like okay, but yeah,
never was huge on Jimmy Hart. I think he's a try hard. I don't like that style of manager. He's just not great. Doesn't do for me. Managers are guys that bring something extra to your character, bring out like a personality trait that the other guy has trouble bringing out. And I think guys like Bobby Heenan, Paul Heyman, guys like that have a really good job of making guys feel special, or Jimmy Hart just seems like a clown at ringside. So
yeah.
But I agree. And the fact that there's a number one contendership match on the line between Giant and Loch Ness, it seems
ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Yeah. All right. So we're going to go over this match quick because this sucks. Colonel Robert Parker versus Medusa. This is not long after Medusa makes the jump from WWF and threw the WWF women's title in the trash. So just keep that in mind as we're watching this and how they're treating her. She was the premier woman coming over, making the jump. And this would be like, I'm not saying Charlotte, but this was, she was women's champion and she's involved in some garbage soap opera level drama that they just didn't take it seriously. WCW did not have an eye for women's wrestling. They didn't care about it. This is just embarrassing. The match went 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Colonel Robert Parker gets the win. Garbage. Nothing good to say about it.
Dirty Dick Slater. That sums up the match. It was just a bad match. And it sucks for Medusa. Like she's a badass girl, and this felt really sloppy, really just slapped together. Go kill 5 minutes, and it wasn't even 5 minutes. So it was interesting.
Yeah, so the intrigue of having a man versus woman in the match, I don't know, never does it for me. Especially it's you can suspend belief in wrestling. Like China was able to do it, and the storyline was behind it, and it felt real. Like I'm sure Charlotte could do it if you made it believable. This wasn't the point of that. It was supposed to be this like cheap, just like shock jock type of thing where they want you to feel a certain way watching, like uncomfortable. This was obviously a time to take you back where women's wrestling wasn't featured at all. So I think we can really appreciate where women's wrestling is now, where we watch, women go out there and the main event shows. To think where we came from with Medusa being here on the card to seeing Becky Lynch win the title to main event at WrestleMania, like that's huge. That's a cognitive shift that's hard to make from 1996 to what was it, 2018, 2017, whatever year that was. But yeah, horrible match. Skip it over if you want to. I give you guys full permission.
It's not a long skip.
Yeah, exactly. Not too long, but every bit counts. We have Lee Marshall backstage with the Road Warriors, and Hawk starts to say something, but Animal cuts him off. Animal says they were going to kick everyone's butts in WCW and they would destroy Booker T and Sting in a street fight tonight. Hawk says he will remove their brain stems and they always get the job done. Just building up this match that we'll talk about in a little bit. That's Chicago street fight. We had a commercial for WCW Slamboree 1996, which they will call the Lethal Lottery. So looking forward to reviewing that with you, my friend.
Should be good.
And our next match on the card is the I Quit match. The Bootyman with the Booty Babe, a.k.a. Kimberly Page, versus Diamond Dallas Page. And this was the slot originally for Johnny B. Bad. The whole promo, everything was built around Johnny B. Bad versus DDP. They threw Bootyman in there. So At Super Bowl last month, we saw Johnny B. Bad beat DDP to keep the services to Kimberly and won $6.6 million of DDP's money. Fast forward to this. Bootyman has Kimberly as the booty babe by his side, so nothing really makes sense storyline-wise. They're just trying to fix it because Johnny B. Bad's gone. Probably should just drop the whole goddamn thing. I don't know why they're continuing to do this. Usually a not quit match should have some level of heat to it. Makes no sense.
Yeah, no, this was another one. Just I could have dealt without it. They could have trimmed this match completely off the card. I would have noticed. I wouldn't have cared. I would have been happy. Like, I just did not need to see the Bootyman versus DDP. It did nothing for me, bro.
Yeah, so this went 16 minutes. Man, this should have went 5 minutes. The fact that there's an I quit tag on it, you know what's going on. Like, someone's not quitting that quickly. So the match was built as an I quit match, and it even said before the match, the Bootyman pinned Page to pick up the win. So they false advertised the match anyway.
Just silly. Yeah.
This to me was everything wrong with WCW booking in 1996 before they got hot. This is exactly wrong. Like, you had the opportunity to change everything. Johnny B. Bad's gone. The whole program is no longer there. If you want to have DDP on the card and you want Bootyman to beat him, don't advertise it as an I quit match. I don't understand.
Yeah. Terrible.
The other thing is 16 minutes long. They spent half that time running around the ring doing shenanigans. So, waste of time. This match was a waste of time. It was thrown together relatively quickly because they were thinking on their feet, but just cut the match. Like, I don't understand why you're forcing to do this, or just, it's not like you're trying to get DDP, the young guy, over. Like, this is just to get Brutus over. Like, I don't understand what they're doing.
Yeah, no, it was just slop. It was one of those things. It was like we'll throw them together. We'll get them out there with the I quit tagline on it. And, it was just stupid. Like, the whole thing, it was a sports entertainment match if I've ever seen one.
It truly was, and way ahead of its time if you really think about it. So I guess it helps to have friends in high places, brother. So post-match, the Bootyman kisses Kimberly and she's blown away and she oversells, like, I can't believe this man wants to be with me. They go to replays for the match. And again, we get the Great Mean Gene backstage with Lex Luger and Jimmy Hart. Hart said it's a sad night because this will be the last time he walks with Luger down to the ring. Hart presents Luger with a t-shirt and says that he loves him before walking away. Luger says he's caught between a rock and a hard place. Luger says this cage match tonight will be the most dangerous match he will ever be a part of. And Luger says he regrets the fact that he has to leave Sting to wrestle by himself, but he said he is going to be watching his back all night long. So this is the segment that very confusing.
Playing with his ribs.
Playing with his ribs. They've been hinting at the Luger heel turn for a while. When he comes out to the ring the last couple weeks, he's looking at Sting and he's like being buddy-buddy with the fans. But as soon as Sting is looking the other way, he's being a heel and ignoring them. So, yeah, we'll see the payoff of this. I'm not exactly sure where this goes. I forget. Like, I don't even know who takes the tag titles off him, so I'm excited to see.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's like, man, AEW gets a bad rap for slow building, but maybe he's basing off Eric Bischoff and Kevin Sullivan because this is taking so long at this point. Like, this has happened January 1st that they were this ill-fitting tag team that wanted to break up. Now they're still champs, and they are still hinting at the breakup.
Yeah. Messy.
So we have this short match here next. We have the number one contender match between the Giant with Jimmy Hart versus Loch Ness. Match went 2 minutes and 34 seconds, thankfully. Loch Ness trips on a cable getting to the ring. Man, bad match. I feel bad for the Giant because he's super talented. I mean, young guy, and you could see the potential that Paul White has and what he eventually achieves. I mean, for a big guy, he moves around, and I don't think Paul White or the Big Show gets the credit he deserves because of how, I guess, shitty he was booked at the end of his run, and he wasn't really made into that attraction anymore. But yeah, Big Show, the Giant, Paul White, yeah, you could tell he's off to some big things, and he was only, I think, a few months into his WCW tenure at this point.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it was, I guess the match did what it was supposed to do and got the Giant that title match on Nitro, so Loch Ness, we know how much I love Loch Ness, so I'm not gonna sit here and clamor about it. I'm glad to see that I think this is his last hurrah here too, which is pretty good.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think he passes away like a few months after this. If I remember correctly, what on the Uncensored podcast that they were talking about on 83 Weeks, I'll confirm that. I mean, he gave the history of what Loch Ness did in different promotions and stuff. Like he was a well-known big man working different promotions. I don't have the ability to look it up right now. But yeah. So there was some, I guess, hope that he could catch lightning in a bottle, but like with that gimmick, with the bad teeth, it's like it's a bad 80s wrestling carny gimmick. Like you're never going to get over, whether you're talented or not. Like you're destined to fail.
Yeah, it's a Festus gimmick in 1996.
Exactly.
And it doesn't go anywhere.
So we have Lee Marshall backstage again, and he talks about the Chicago street fight coming up next. Booker T and Sting join him, with Booker talking and taking the Road Warriors out and getting Harlem Heat a chance at the tag titles. Sting says Booker came from the street and he shouldn't forget that, especially tonight. Sting says the Road Warriors don't stand a chance tonight, and Booker and Sting will come out on top. Chicago street fight here. Sting and Booker T versus the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal. So if Sting and Booker T win the match, Harlem Heat gets a shot at the WCW Tag Team Champions. Confusing stipulations. Like, what is in it for Sting at this point, right? Like, what?
No,
he's just a good guy. He's just a nice guy.
He's got the face paint.
He's the most surfer Sting you can be here. This match, you talked about long matches. This match went 29 minutes and 33 seconds of what the hell did she just say? Like, it was like, man, it went 15, 20 minutes too long. And I think it was a lot of good action. I just don't understand like why they continue to go. And like there was certain times it's like, all right, match is over. All right, it was a good match. And then it went another 10 minutes. And then I was like, all right, match is over. And then went another 10 minutes.
There was a lot of confusion and spots and stuff like that too. So it wasn't the tightest match put together. Like I Sting had, I think it was Hawk, and he was like raking his eyes, and Animal was pinning somebody next to him, and like Sting wasn't trying to break up the pin. He's just sitting there holding Hawk up. Animals got Booker T down, and it was just like, what are you guys doing, man? Like it won another like 10 minutes after that. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, especially that we're trying to like fit this in tonight. I know we were texting like, when is this match gonna end? Like it just this was the match you could have trimmed some fat on. I get the booking because like Sting and Booker get the win here. If I didn't say that to you guys, because Stevie Ray comes out to the ring and hits Hawk with a chair, and Booker covers him and pick up the win. So a little shady, keeps the Road Warriors strong. But they were trying to, I guess, emphasize how strong the Road Warriors really are. That if they were going to lose, that to do it in a way that's like, oh, it took the kitchen sink to beat them and a chair shot. The ending was creative with the four men ganging up and taking Animal out. So I guess that was a plus. I thought I enjoyed that it was a good way to get the tag team that's supposed to be dominant out. But we've seen the Road Warriors lose to other teams, so it's not like they're not willing to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was just there. I mean, I probably would have gave it it was just there. I would probably give it, a higher rating if it went a little bit shorter, but that's, I usually love longer matches, but there was so much of that you could have just cut out and would have been much, much better.
Yeah, no, this was very drawn out. It got a little repetitive by watching it, and it was just like, okay, like where are we going? We're like, when do we get out of this tunnel? Can we pull off to the side of the road finally and just fucking take a breather? Like it was a lot going on there. But yeah, it wasn't the worst thing on the show. So,
not at all. Not at all. It was a good match. It just felt, when you become fatigued watching one match, it's not a good sign for wrestling. And I love every guy involved in this match. They're all legends. It just felt like you just cut 10 minutes off. It'd be a 4-star match, like it would be there. Because this style emphasized a lot what the Road Warriors can do. And Booker looked great. Sting looked great.
Yeah.
It just was stuff that just end the fucking match. Like that's what I felt like. And I was like, you should never feel that way. Yeah, exactly. So let us know in the comments if you guys disagree, if you felt like, no, this match was perfect, leave it the length it is. I'd be curious to hear if someone really enjoys it. But from my opinion, it just went a little bit too long. After the match, Stevie Ray's backstage hit an Animal with the same chair, and Sting and Booker go to the back as they show replays of the match. And now it's time for the main event. We get Michael Buffer in the ring, talking about the Doomsday Cage. And man, this is just absolute chaos. We have the Mega Powers. Let me just read off the names here. The Mega Powers, Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage, rocking a lot of the Mega Powers gear, versus the Alliance to end Hulkamania. That's what they're going by. So listen to this list of guys. We talked about it in the newsletter. There's 8 guys in this team. So follow along here, guys. The Nature Boy Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, the Taskmaster Kevin Sullivan, Lex Luger, Ming, the Barbarian, Z Gangsta, and the Ultimate Solution with Elizabeth Woman and Jimmy Hart. We're going to try our best to cover it in total. It's an 8-on-2 match, but we have our hands full. Pillman was supposed to be in this match as well, and the commentary team does mention that, as we mentioned as well. And they do mention the next night on Nitro, which we will talk about. The rules were confusing. Like, going into this match, Bellcaster, did you know like what the rules were supposed to be?
No, I'm still very uncertain. Like, it didn't make sense. A lot of the shit they were doing, it was way all over the place. There was too much going on. Too much action outside of the cage for this to be, the Doomsday Cage. Like, they sold it so well, and then they, like, Hogan's fighting in the ring like 15 minutes into like, it was just weird.
I mean, the lighting of the match too sucked. Like, that also took away from it. This was like the original like Fiend Hell in a Cell, where like there's smoke and it's hard to see. Just for a reference too, and again, Meltzer is not the be all end all. I know people want to say I'm like a shill for Meltzer because I'm using him, but like, he is the historian here. He gave this match a -3 stars. How is that? Deserved, but how is that possible that the match is -3 stars? Like, he took 3 stars away.
Man, like I said, it was all over the place though, and like nothing about it was a cage match. Besides that, they were wrestling in it for a few minutes, and it had like that Freddy Krueger camera like style to it, to where they're like, these guys are fighting and they got the lights. It sounded like, or it looked terrible. It was just bad until they got into the big ring in the middle of the arena again. It was good there, and then it was like, then they go back, and it was like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, so to recap some of the match, guys, and I know if you did watch it, you know what I'm talking about, but they start in the top tier of the cage, and it's Savage, Hogan, Flair, and Arn Anderson. Savage works on Flair. You could tell, though, and anyone talking about this match, if you watch any shoot interviews, that you can't take a bump in the cage because it's bending. You're trying to do stuff, and now it's just becoming punches with some of the guys that have the worst working punches in the game at the top of the cage. Flair slams Savage into the cage. Savage recovers and just starts beating on Anderson. This reminded me of having a backyard wrestling match with your friends when you're like 8 years old, where like you can't do the moves. You're just kind of hitting each other and no one's selling. As you mentioned, they leave the cage, which is the whole pull of it, and they go in the ring and they're wrestling in the ring, and then they go back to the cage. They have it in the place where eventually, like, that spot up there reminds me of the Lions Den match where they would have it like next to the Titantron over there. I pictured this, like, if it's going to be the main event, the ring should be covered in the cage. Like, it should be in the middle of the ring. They should drop it down. And I understand it's a huge cage. You don't want to hang it up all night. Probably don't have the capability to do that safely. But the fact that it's like by the entrance thing, like, they thought it would build up suspense all night. It ruined it for me. I mean, not that I thought anything could have made it better. It just was horrible.
I thought it looked stupid. Like, especially throughout, like, when the street fight happened, the Road Warriors are coming out, and like, they got pyro going off of the scaffolding next to the cage, and it was just like, what the hell are we watching here?
So I'll read you guys the ending here. So the Solution slams Savage down. Savage comes off the top, but he gets caught and out down to the mat. Arn Anderson and Ric Flair finally escape their cage and make their way down. It's now 4-on-2, and Hogan and Savage are getting quadruple teamed. The Bootyman comes out to the ring with some powder and frying pans and allows Hogan and Savage to clean house. Luger gets in the fray and takes Savage out from behind, and Luger puts on a weighted glove and he takes Flair out instead. That looked awful, by the way.
Yeah.
Savage covers Flair and pins him to pick up the win for the Mega Powers as Hogan and Savage leave the cage. This match, also talking about the street fight, this match went 25 minutes and 16 seconds for all the build. The street fight was still longer by 5 minutes.
This felt like it was 40 minutes longer than 25 minutes, too. This was just so hard to get through.
I give them credit, at least, for trying to do something new. And I really do appreciate creativity in wrestling. Like, I'm so glad, though, that this was never done again. I think we did see something like it with the infamous Jeff Jarrett cage in WCW.
Much cleaner looking triple cage, though, and
exactly, and they had it in the ring, like it was
they
in
had
the middle
rules.
Of the ring.
Yeah,
they were
infallible rule.
Well, if I remember, they had weapons like hanging in the top cage, and like there was only access to certain points. This was just, absolute chaos in a bad way.
Yeah.
After the match, the Alliance is arguing in the ring, and the announcers talk about finding out why Luger hit Flair instead of Savage, and Heenan is livid about Hogan winning again as the show goes off the air.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, it's worth checking out. Like,
it is.
It's bad, but it's also, you kind of have to do your homework as a wrestling fan. It's almost a rite of passage at this point. Check it out. Like,
Yeah.
I would put this on a wrestling bucket list. You have to see this. You have to see it to believe it.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, I mean, they were hitting. Hogan and Savage had frying pans at one point, and that's how they took out the team. They were hitting them with frying pans, and it was so bad, but in a fun way. I guess that's the takeaway from it. At least it was enjoyable to get a laugh out of.
Yeah, this is why people turned away from WCW. Like, this is the type of wrestling. Like, if I saw this when I was a fan of wrestling as a kid,
yeah,
it's horrible. Like, this is. And they move away from things like this. And luckily they move into reality-based storytelling. And this is the last of the goofy shit I think we're really going to see for a bit. I mean, it's still goofy, but as we move into June with the NWO stuff, it's crazy a difference that 3 months really makes. Like,
yeah,
it's crazy to see where they work. I mean, it almost like I want to start at the NWO stuff because that's the good stuff, but you don't appreciate the good stuff unless you deal with some of this and see where the growth was, see how bad Hogan was booking himself, and how bad all the storytelling was. And then you see how good the NWO stuff with Hall and Nash coming in. So can't appreciate the sunshine without a little bit of rain, Mike Belcaster.
Absolutely, man.
All right, so let's wrap up Uncensored. We'll give our thoughts after we finish with this follow-up show of Nitro, which is the day after. So this is from Huntsville, Alabama, the home of Conrad Thompson. So if you guys are a fan of the Podfather, Conrad Thompson, Huntsville, Alabama. We have the Nitro opening video, which again always pleases me, man. I love watching the fire in the street, reminiscent of what Warzone would eventually look like. So almost a direct Warzone became a direct ripoff of what they were doing, but such a cool feel, such a nostalgic feel when you watch that Nitro open. I never skip it. I always watch it.
No, I love it. It's one of my favorite things about Nitro.
So we have Eric, Mongo, and Bobby hyping up the Flair Giant main event. And Mongo's convinced this will be the beginning of the end of the Alliance and HULKAMANIA. God, I hope so. The one thing I had a question about, because I know you were watching WCW as a kid, at this point, Dusty Rhodes only shows up to do big events, right? He's just a big event announcer.
He's there for the pay-per-views, Daddy. Yeah.
But he's working backstage at this point, right? Like, he's still doing a lot of the booking and working behind the scenes.
Yeah, and just while we are on the conversation of Dusty, I couldn't not see Cody and him at the pay-per-view. Every time they showed the announcers team, I was like, damn, that's the most I've seen Dusty look like Cody.
Yeah.
Like, you catch it, but like it's there. You're like, whoa, man. Like, Dusty was a little slimmer. He was looking good in that black suit. It was cool. I was very, very like taken back by that. I was like, wow, look at that shit. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. And a lot of his cadence too, obviously, is taken from his dad, and the bleached hair definitely adds to it, but also it's just presence, man. Like, Dusty has a presence, Cody has a presence, and he's coming to his own, obviously, but I think he's really leaned into who his dad was and is using it to his advantage, and that's what's making his WWE run so entertaining right now. But we digress. Let's move into the opening match here, which was a banger, man. We got two legends here. Randy Savage defeated the Belfast Bruiser, aka Fit Finlay. Eric Bischoff does mention during commentary that that Finlay had destroyed Steven Regal's face, and you mentioned the broken cheekbone. So not sure how long he's out of action, but definitely an interesting tidbit that they are talking about real life shoot injuries.
Yeah. It was hard one not to talk about. I mean, William Regal looked like, he was partying with Hogan and Bootyman all night.
So this match didn't go too long. Finlay sends Savage face first into the ring post. Finlay drops Savage throat first into the guardrail. Moments later, Finlay misses a shoulder in the corner, and Savage connects with the flying elbow drop to pick up the win. Randy Savage, man, every week he comes out with some awesome gear. Yeah. I'm not sure if there's a figure for this gear, but it does look kind of familiar. It was like a black and green. He just looks amazing. Always. There's no one that carries himself like Macho Man Randy Savage. And this is just an opening match of Nitro, and he comes out looking like it's the main event of WrestleMania. There's the amount of gear and just the uniqueness. He never wears the same gear twice, it seems. Yeah. It's his WCW gear is vastly underrated. I know people love to talk about him in the underwear tights with the stars. His pants with like the coat and the frills and the tassels and the cowboy hats. The Slim Jim Macho Man completely rocks, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is my Macho Man. You know, this is the one I fell in love with. This is what made me like really, really big fan of his. And that elbow drop he does on Finley was great. This was a fun match. Very, very good way to open up a Nitro. We need more of this on these pay-per-views, man.
To tie it back to modern day, we saw CM Punk drop a very Randy Savage-like elbow on Dynamite this week, and he pays homage to Savage every time, putting his arms up in the air. And we saw that he is a big fan of Macho, and he did wear those pink star tights when Macho passed away. That's a great. There's a figure of that Punk, right? Or is that a custom?
No, they made like a basic version of it, which so sad we didn't get like an elite. You know, it would have been beautiful, but it's still glad we got it nonetheless.
There's a chance he wears something like that in AEW. I mean, they don't have copyright to Macho's tights, right? I mean, they could, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, if he does it, he can do whatever the hell he wants. It's CM Punk style, man.
Shocks me he hasn't wore something very Brett. I mean, he wears Brett's colors, but it shocks me he hasn't wore like a Hitman type of vibe on the back of his side. Maybe we'll see that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe when he teams with FTR, they'll do something like that.
Hey, I'm here for it.
So we have Mean Gene Okerlund, and he welcomes WCW World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair. Flair cuts an awesome promo here. He does I've got the whole world in my hands. They alluded that he did this Saturday night as well. We have not been watching Saturday Night WCW. We just don't have time to do that as well. But it's like Friday Rampage. Sometimes you watch, sometimes you don't. The results are there, but it's crazy how similar Saturday Night WCW is to Rampage as far as booking goes. Gene mentions Luger intentionally hitting Flair with a loaded glove, and Flair says that Luger wants to be where Flair is, and Flair says that the costly error that Luger made last night, Luger's on the list of people who will not be able to style and profile. Great promo. Later in the night, I know Liz is holding dollar bills and they're hyping up how rich she is, and we'll talk about like the entrance later in the night.
Yeah,
they're singles. I think she had like $50 worth of singles. He's so rich, he has singles in his hand.
It's all about the look. If you're playing it off, you're gonna make it look good. Back then we probably couldn't even see if there were singles on our big box TVs.
No, true.
Like, look at all that cash. Look at all that cash, man. Yeah.
Yep. Our next match here is WCW United States Champion Conan defeating Mr. JL to retain the title. You and I were texting. Did you realize who JL was before
I did not know, and I was like, bullshit. I clicked it. I went through it. I searched it while I was watching it. It's a very own Jerry Lynn, man. Crazy.
Yeah. So Jerry Lynn, ECW legend and, wrestling legend, I should say. This was a good match. Conan is still getting the rub here, gets the win, retains his championship. I did go back and found a podcast where Jerry Lynn does talk about why he wore the mask in WCW. So if you guys will humor me, I will talk about it. I think it is interesting to talk about. So the mask idea was my idea, and this is quote Jerry Lynn, because it's been 7.5 years since I broke in the business. I asked Brad, what do I have to do to get a break? Well, the business has changed. It's all TV now, so it's about capturing the viewer's attention so they don't change the channel. It has to be something more visual. I had been going to Japan quite a bit, and I saw a lot of cool mask gimmicks. I thought no one in the States is doing a mask right now. I was working in a screen printing shop at the time, and I had a friend of mine in the art department help me come up with a design. At the time, the Power Rangers were huge on TV. I thought, let's come up with something that's sort of Power Rangers and Alien-like a little crossover between the two. He came up with the outfit. It cost me $1,250 to get the outfit made because there weren't a lot of gear makers running around back then. Yeah. Found the company. I think they were called Satin Threads, and they did everything from choir gowns to wedding dresses, you name it. So the labor was very expensive. They made the first outfit, blah, 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 blah. They were saying, what do you want to be called? And I'm throwing out names like Phantasm or the Cyber Knight, just throwing names out there. And Kevin Sullivan said, well, why don't we slap a name on you without researching any copyright infringements? This is 2 hours before Kevin Sullivan was booking at the time, and he said, fuck it, call him Mr. JL. I thought in time I had this beginning of the end. $1,250 down the drain. But I even told Kevin years later when we talked about it, and he apologized, and I said, Kevin, it's not your fault. I wouldn't say a fish in a big pond. I was a little guppy in the ocean because you had all the heavy hitters there. You had the NWO, Sting, Macho Man, Giant. It was like, I just was glad to be signed, so I don't blame Kevin. He had a lot on his plate. That's how it all came about. So long quote. I apologize for reading there.
That was great.
So interesting because Jerry Lynn goes on to do a lot of good stuff in the wrestling business. You put some guys under a mask, it just doesn't work. And some guys are meant to wrestle with their face being shown. I just thought it was a local jobber before I even looked at it. Like, it didn't even look like Jerry Lynn's moveset.
I thought it was Super Callow. You know, we'll see him a little down the line. I was like, oh, okay. It was like Super Callow's making his debut under different masks. And then it was like, oh, Mr. JL. I was like, what the hell? It's very interesting.
So, yeah, just wanted to bring that to you guys. And we do the research here. None of the recaps had said it was Jerry Lynn. They just call him Mr. JL. And if you look at his Wikipedia page, it does come up. And he recently did an interview about this. So it's not like, you know, he talks about it often. So we're kind of lucky enough that we found the info.
Yeah.
And then the transcript from the podcast. Our next match here, we have Bootyman defeating Disco Inferno with a high knee lift. And it's over in a matter of minutes. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the first time we see Disco Inferno?
Definitely the first time we've seen him with our show. So that's you know, that says something. I don't think Disco
was he around in 95? I mean, we could look it up and
yeah. No,
yeah, I mean, he's in the news sometimes, so he doesn't really matter. He is sort of one of those guys that has heat with the wrestlers today. I mean, Kenny Omega and him historically go back and forth because of his shitty takes, which I'm here for. I love Kenny Omega putting him in his place. So some funny stuff there. But yeah, Bootyman's still getting the push here, unfortunately. But Disco Inferno, I think he was wearing white tights, and usually he wore like the Elvis pants. He wore some tights tonight.
Yeah. I think this is the first he started dabbling into the tights because I know he started changing the colors up and stuff. So it was interesting. It's a quick match. We're looking 1 minute and 14 seconds. That's that's crazy.
So they do a Saturday Night Worldwide or whatever it's called, Saturday Night WCW. I don't know exactly sure what the show is called, but they have a Saturday Night graphic that talks about Luger defending the television title against Shark with the worst goddamn makeup in that graphic of all time. So John Tenta, God rest his soul. I love Earthquake, but Shark gimmick was not it, brother. Like, it was awful.
No, not it, brother.
Not it, brother. Sting takes on Dean Malenko. Ric Flair will be in action. Bobby Eaton, Belfast Bruiser, and the Giant takes on Big Bubba all on Saturday night. It had me intrigued. I kind of wanted to watch it. It was almost like, you know, when I was doing the AEW recap show on my Acefield Retro channel, I would be like, Nick, are you watching Rampage? So I asked you, Mike Belcast, would you watch Saturday Night Live if they presented that card to you?
Yeah, I would. I would definitely bounce. It wouldn't be an every week thing, but you know, I'm here for certain stuff. I'd be down for it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see like Shark against Luger, but everything else, Ric Flair in an enhancement match, I kind of want to see too. Like, that's not a thing you usually see. World champion action on your secondary show. It's a cool thing.
Stuff, right? Yeah.
All right. Here we have the WCW World Heavyweight Tag Team Champions Sting and Lex Luger defeating the American Males in a non-title match. So Luger, make sure to put over that the American Males are important opponents. So this match doesn't go too long. Sting wins with a crossbody. American Males were getting a slight push, right? I mean, you know, so we get a young Buff Bagwell, Scotty Riggs. Yeah, just there. The match was okay. Sting and Lex Luger continue to do their hinting at potential heel turn. Weird because Luger had that face turn on during the match, hitting Flair with the padded glove. Who knows what they're doing here? I'm not exactly sure what this is going, but I'm here for the ride. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, they're all over the place, especially these last two shows. It's a lot of all over the place shit. But yeah, I'm excited to see where we end up down the road.
100%. So after the match, Sting and American Male show respect to each other as Luger's in the aisle celebrating obnoxiously. So that was a nice little touch.
Yeah.
And in our main event, we have the WCW World Heavyweight Champion wrestling the Giant to a no contest to retain the title. You know, cool to see Giant in the main event. He's such a young guy here.
Baby.
If you do the math, I mean, he, like we talked about before, he only had months at this point of being in WCW, and he's straight to the main event. I mean, billed as Andre's son. I'm not sure if they're still hyping that here, but you know, the undercurrent is that he is the Giant's son. Yeah, he was destined for greatness from the jump, and you know, I think the Giant. he impresses me every week. And I know they don't give him the opportunity to do a lot of the stuff, but some of the bumps he took, like he went off the top rope in this match. He took a bump over the top rope, like he fell over the top rope, took a bump to the floor. As a big dude, 7'2", that he's hopping around like that. There's guys that are half his size that can't do the things he's doing. He is an athletic freak, and I think I'm going to say it again. Paul White doesn't get his flowers, man. I would agree that his end of his career was horrendous. Like the booking, he's face, he's heel, he's face, he's heel, he's face, he's heel, he's face, he's heel, sucked. But man, he's had a long career. Yeah, he was a showcase, man. When you see him out there, they didn't make him a spectacle like they probably should have.
Yeah, and not even going into like his feud with him and Nash and WCW is like one of my favorite things I remember watching when I was growing up. I was just like, wow, like, Nash did that power bomb spot where he breaks his neck and like they turned it into a huge angle. And it's money, man. It's so good. So, but yeah, Paul White had a hell of a career and a long ass one too. I mean, to think that he still wrestles occasionally, when called up upon. That's wild that he's still doing it in 2022, and we're watching him run havoc over here in 1996. That's insane, man.
Yeah, only a few years from his Waterboy movie debut too, as well. So I think 2 years from now, 1998 is when Waterboy came out, if I remember, or 97, one of those years. But I have a question for you, and this has nothing really to do with. I mean, it does sort of. Would you take this WCW run of the Giant, where he's this raw talent, where he can do a lot of things, or would you take? For me, best Big Show was 2003 Big Show, where he's having those matches with Brock Lesnar. Which one to you was better?
Yeah, I'll say definitely the Brock Lesnar years. I think his character work here was great, though. Coming out with the green lights and shit, it just added like this weird nonsense to it. But then them booking him as Andre's kid. That's what sold me on him when I was that young. I was like, wow, it's like, this is Andre the Giant's son. I was like, this is crazy, like, because you get that lineage, that badge to wear, and it just kind of pushes you in a different direction. But his work with Brock is some of the best shit ever. So I totally think that work-wise, way better than what we've been watching.
Yeah, and I think, obviously his career, sometimes when your career goes so long, people take you for granted. And, if his career was shorter or whatever, people probably look at him much differently. One of the best debuts in WWE history.
Yeah.
That St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Awesome moment. I love that figure too. And the story with that, how his first figure, he's in street clothes because he was still under contract with WCW. And that's why he's in the black shirt and the black pants.
Yeah.
So that's such a cool story that they tell. But yeah, I mean, Big Show's not in my top 10, my Mount Rushmore by any means, but it's cool to see him as a raw talent here and what he became. He really honed his craft. And as a big guy, working big man, we talk about all the time, there's a certain style you work. He kind of broke the mold a little bit. He wasn't working that I'm just going to kick and punch you and just dominate you like the Omos, the Andre the Giant, Great Khali. He's out there doing athletic shit that, like, the bar is raised for a guy his size. And I think, for a guy like Luchasaurus on AEW to look up to a guy that was able to do that, sets the bar pretty high. So kudos to Paul White and all his contributions to the wrestling business.
We're giving him his flowers, damn it.
Yeah, never thought that's where the show would take us here, but I just appreciated him here. Like, it was cool. And obviously Flair is awesome. He bumps like a champ, and Flair is WCW at this point. He's so much fun to watch. His promo work. And a lot of what I saw at MJF on Wednesday, there was some Flair mannerisms in him as well. Like that, him shaking his head and like just being absolutely out of his mind. That was a lot of what we saw from Ric Flair. Just going absolutely bonkers. But let's move into the Chaser and talk about our favorite part of these two nights of wrestling. All right, so for the Chaser, every week we will pick our favorite part of the two nights of wrestling. So obviously we have a lot of wrestling to choose from. We have Uncensored and we have One Night of Nitro. So let's start with you, Mike Belcaster. Favorite match or moment that we saw from these two nights?
Man, hard to tell. Put together a very good thing. I definitely think my favorite match from Uncensored was Fit Finley versus Lord Steven Regal. I thought it was just a beat the shit out of each other fun, just great time. That if you were studying the game and you want to watch a good shoot fight, that's a good shoot fight, man. They literally tear up the place. And I'll do a pick from each just to make it even. But Nitro, just because the way we were talking about it is Ric Flair and the Giant. I like there were some good spots in there. I wanted to go, Finley again with the Macho Man, but you got to the Giant's so good in the ring. Paul White is so good. Ric Flair is so good. The promo on Flair did at the beginning of Nitro, so great, man. So it's that total package. I love. I'm here for it.
Hell yeah, man. So I'm gonna agree with you, and I'm just gonna reiterate what you had said. I think it was a hard hitting match, and very rarely does a DQ finish work for me, but in this match it did, because it spoke to just how violent and unsanctioned the match became, and the ref couldn't control the two guys in the ring. Great match, and just absolutely brutal. And I just don't think 1996 wrestling was ready for these guys at all.
No.
I think in 2022 this match would just get 5 stars, no doubt in my mind, because of just how brutal they worked, and that's like what sells nowadays, especially New Japan. GCW, that strong style working rate resonates with fans nowadays because they want to believe it's real. And these two guys were just way ahead of their time. And it's so cool to see Regal on television still doing his thing with the Blackpool Combat Club. So that for me is definitely my match of Uncensored. Some honorable mentions, I would say the opening match with Eddie and Conan was a good match as well. So that would be my honorable mention. The rest of the card was just there. I don't think it was historically bad pay-per-view at all. I don't think, lumping the main event into the rest of the card is just unfair. There's some good wrestling on the card for sure. I mean, there duds, of course, but it's 1996 wrestling. If you turn the channel to WWF, the same stuff was going on the other end. Maybe not 100%. As egregious as that cage match, but at least they were trying something different and being outside the box. Like, give them credit there. Yeah. It was bad. It's worth watching. Is it like unbearably, unwatchably good? No, not really. Because maybe my expectation was I look at this match and look at the guys in it. Look at it. A guy like Z Gangsta, like the former Zeus, Ultimate Solution, Kevin Sullivan in this match in a cage. It's not going to be a catch as catch can, technical match. You just know it's not going to be. So I went in thinking about that. So I just can't help but think what it would have been like if BRIAN PILLMAN was in this match. I'm happy he wasn't, because he would have just been buried by the Mega Powers. But what would Pillman have done in this cage? He probably would have climbed to the top or whatever. He would have done something
crazy. Yeah.
For the Nitro, I would say it's tough to say, but I have to probably go with the same thing. I mean, not to be redundant with you said, but I think it's a fair point. Talked about the Giant giving him his flowers. A world title match on Nitro following a pay-per-view. It shows WCW was giving their all to please the fans. And Ric Flair defending his championship, DQ finish or no contest aside, defending the title live on Nitro is just so cool to see, because you weren't seeing this on Raw ever. They were not defending the title. It was on pay-per-view or in your house or bust. That was it. Yeah. So seeing them to defend the title, especially the night after, they didn't have to do that. I know the title wasn't defended at Uncensored. But you didn't have to defend it the night after Nitro. People were tuning in anyway. You could have just, we got a couple title matches in this match. I mean, the tag titles were the tag champions were in action too. So they just always pack the card up and they make it worth watching. And that's what I appreciate about the team in WCW.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better. I think that the Nitro card itself was great. We had some really good stuff on there. We watched Conan fight Jerry Lynn. We've seen, the show opens up with what's it called, Macho Man and Fit Finley. How do you not love that? That's crazy. It's awesome to see.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I think Nitro is really setting the bar, and they're getting ready to hit it out of the park right now. Their bases are loaded. They're getting there. They're ready to really swing for the fences, and they may run into one by accident sometimes, but I think the NWO stuff, it's done for a reason. Maybe it was just the perfect place at the perfect time, the right guys. And I just can't wait to watch it develop organically. I cannot wait to get on here and talk about when Scott Hall shows up, and talk about when Nash shows up, and just talk about all the reality that gets blurred. Talk about the segment with Rey Mysterio and the cops are. I can't wait to talk about that stuff. And
That's going to be great.
That's why we picked this year, like have to endure a little bit of the muddiness before we get to the greener pastures that 1996 provides. And the year at the end gets really, really fun. And I just can't wait to talk about it. It's coming up soon, man. So
yeah,
I appreciate all you guys coming on the ride with us. This has been a blast. Got a lot of good feedback on social media from a lot of people, and even some guys in the tavern that they say they're really enjoying what we're doing and they're taking the journey with us. And even if you haven't started, start where we are now. Just pop in, start watching where we are, and watch along with us. I mean, you can go back and watch the other episodes, but hop along on the ride. The train's moving, but pop in. And we're gonna see some real wrestling history come up soon, and we're gonna watch it in real time. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. I'm super excited, man.
All right, let's close the tab here as we get ready to start our weekend on Friday night. All right, here's our final wrap up as the bar lights are coming on, and you're starting to see what people really look like that you were talking to all night. So it's time to close the bar, close the tab, make sure that we square up with our bartenders, and make sure you guys understand that our next week's show is going to be June 10th, 2022, and we'll be talking about WCW Nitro from April Fool's Day, April 1st, 1996. And then as we talked about in the beginning of the show, they skip a week for some reason. I forget. We'll figure out why, and I'll bring it to you then. And we have another show the week after, so April 15th, and we're just going to blow right through April. There's only a few episodes to talk about. That will be episode 8, believe it or not. We're already 8 weeks into doing this, and it's been an absolute blast, Mike Belcaster.
Hell yeah. It goes by fast when you're having a good time, man.
So tomorrow, you guys are listening to this Friday night, I'll be on my way to checking out GCW in Atlantic City. So I will be able to pop on to the show with you guys on Monday and talk about some GCW. So anything else going on in the tavern on your end that you want to hype up?
Sessions dropped earlier today. Go listen to that. It might not be our best audio quality. We did have some HollerNet issues. We've had to do half the interview on phone, wrapping up my time in Vegas a little bit. It was good stuff. Really, really fun conversation. I'm excited that I have nothing to do and get to relax and chill out, because I ran myself down to the ground, literally, to where I had to miss the pay-per-view and fly home early, which was no fun for me. But you know what the best part was? Watching the pay-per-view on the airplane. Best flight I think I've ever had in my entire life.
Best flight ever?
Yeah.
So also want to congratulate the two bad Chads who started this whole thing, this Turnbuckle Tavern thing that we call home, for us to have a platform to talk about wrestling that we know and love, past, present, and future wrestling, having debates and talking about it. This is the 2-year anniversary, guys. The 104th episode of the flagship show dropped yesterday. So make sure you guys check that out on audio platforms, Spotify, Apple, wherever you find your audio. Make sure you guys leave a 5-star review. Kudos to them. This would start as a conversation, an idea in their head has grown into, at this point, many people touched by the wrestling ideas that we have. We have this reach now, and we have relationships with each other that can't be discounted. We live all these miles away, and we're able to enjoy wrestling together and do it on the stage where we can talk about it. It's been so much fun. I've been a part of it for a few short months, but watching what's been grown since I've been here, and seeing what started as just two guys that love to talk about wrestling to a whole bunch of friends that, love what they're doing. It's a lot of fun to watch as they grow.
No, absolutely. Big congrats out to them. They've started a pro wrestling conversation network at this point. We have how many people under our belt now? We're gotta be pushing 10 to 12. We're blowing up. We're doing great things. I mean, we have a show every day of the week. Yeah, 10, right?
I don't know. I think it's maybe more than that. But I also want to thank the Pod Foundation as well for always helping us out. Extra Cool, the Chick Foley show, coming down the aisle. J-Bone, obviously part of the tavern, but want to mention him as well. Just on my end, I was on J-Bone's show doing a little figure reveal, and gave some love to Mike Belcaster and all the reveals we talked about. And just talking about all figures, and it was awesome to be coming down the aisle again, because that's how my journey to the tavern started. If everyone doesn't know, I was a guest on J-Bone's show, randomly. We were Instagram friends, and we were chatting, and he asked me to come on, After that, I went on the debate, and after that, the history is there. I just fit right in, it seems like, and it's been a lot of fun. As I said, I use that word a lot, but we're having a blast here, Mike Buggins. This is a lot of fun, and this is a good time to be a wrestling fan.
Huge time to be a wrestling fan, and all across the board. Like even if you are a WWE only or whatever you want to call it, I feel like everybody's getting the best that they can get, or they have gotten in years. I think this is the best boom period since what we're covering now here at Shot of Nostalgia. I think there's this, what's going on in 2022 is kind of like that end of 2000 or 1996, man. We're getting a lot of good stuff going on. So I love it, man. This is my happy place. I'm happy I fucking know all you freak dudes, and we get to do all this together. It makes the world go around,
Absolutely, man. This is amazing to have this opportunity to talk about wrestling and the AEW wrap-up show, whether it be the Raw Down or Honor Society, the flagship, the debate. Like every show here on the Tavern just is entertaining, and like you had said, like we have shows every day of the week. So go to the turnbuckletavern.com. Make sure you guys give us love on all these platforms: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok. Go check out our TikTok. It's blowing up. Pro Wrestling Tees. You want to buy a shirt? That would help us a lot. Buy a Shot of Nostalgia shirt, the Tavern Daddy shirt. Buy some merch. ProWrestlingTees.com/tavern. Check it out. And don't just buy our shirts. Buy some other shirts. Buy the Raw Down shirts. Buy some shirts from Honor Society. Buy just a random Turnbuckle Tavern shirt. I got the classic hoodie from Teespring. Oh, did I mention Teespring? We got some good shirts from Teespring as well. The Anti-Taskmaster shirt. I am a proud owner of that shirt. I'll probably wear it next week so you guys can check it out. Buy some merch. It's only $20. Support the Tavern. It goes a really long way, guys. The best you can do is share what we do here. Get involved. Hop in the comments. I appreciate everyone that hopped in the comments tonight. I appreciate everyone that talked about Honor Society the other night. AEW wrap-up was crazy. We had all these great ideas going back and forth. That's when wrestling is fun, when we're having respectful debates where people go back and forth and we disagree on stuff, but that's okay because that's what makes wrestling fun.
We're grown-ass men. We can talk about a fake sport in a conversational manner without getting hot at each other. That's what I like to do.
I'm going to put you on the spot right now, quick.
Yes.
Do you think historically, go 10 years down the line, which has more historical significance, this MJF situation or Brian Pillman?
The way how things played out, I mean, Brian Pillman was great in its time, but MJF is doing something that I don't think people were ready for. I think it's going to get really good. So I'll say 10 years down the line, this MJF thing is going to be this is going to be the new pipe bomb. This is going to be the new everything.
And to think in 10 years, MJF will still be younger than CM Punk and probably still wrestling. How many accolades under his belt? It's just, the future of wrestling is so young, man. It's so fun. Think about the young crop of wrestlers that we have coming up, and ones that we haven't even seen yet too. Think about what Creative Pro has been churning out of that factory of great wrestling. So, man, I can sit here and talk to you all day about this, but let's get our weekend started.
Let's do it, brother.
Make sure you guys, like I said, do all the things I told you. Go to turnbuckletavern.com, support us, go on Instagram, like all our stuff, follow us, interact with us, have a conversation with us. And most importantly, guys, please tip your bartenders. We'll see you guys next week.